Hi everyone, I am Dr. Michelle Eckler, Supervisor of Technology for Teaching and Learning, and today I am going to show you how to use Google Sheets and Google Data Studio to create your own data dashboard that will allow you to easily and simply analyze your student data. All right, so the first thing you're going to do is download this sample student data sheet from your Google Classroom. You're going to want to put it somewhere in your Google Drive that will be easy to find later on because you're going to need to attach it to your Google Data Studio. Once you have that downloaded, you can open it up and just take a look. This is silly data. My favorite TV show is The Office. These are characters from The Office. I tried to make up what they might have for absences and averages based upon what I know of their characters. But you will use this data for practice, and then you can actually use your own student data to create your Data Studio template later on. But this is the data we are going to use for this activity. Go ahead and close that out. I know where I've saved it. And I'm going to open up a new tab, and I'm going to go to datastudio.google.com. If this is the first time you've ever been there, you're going to have to type out the whole thing. If you've been to it before, it'll pop up just like mine did. And yours is probably going to pop up if it's the first time you've ever used it with a tutorial. I just want you to close out of the tutorial. Eventually, you could actually get back into it. It's right here. It's called the tutorial report. So if you wanted to work through the Data Studio tutorial, you could. But what I'm going to teach you are some of the basics. You actually don't need that tutorial report. We're going to actually start by clicking this button here, which is a blank report. And that is going to open up a brand new Data Studio report for us. The first thing we need to do is connect our data source. Now we are using data directly from Google Sheets. So we're going to click on Google Sheets, and then you're going to have to find that data where you actually saved it to. So I often, when I'm looking for it, will click on this here that says open from Google Drive. But since I recently opened my sample student data, that's actually going to show right up here at the top for me. So I'm going to click on that. I do want to keep it with sheet one because sheet one is the only place I have data. I am going to use my first row as headers, and there's no hidden or filtered cells in here, but if you had filtered something out, you would actually be able to not include it if you wanted to not include it. For this particular example, we're just going to leave the filtered cells. That's more of a deeper thing you might do later on, but we're going to leave it as is. And then we're going to click Add. So when your data dashboard opens up for the first time, it's automatically going to have this chart in it, depending upon your data. Usually it's something related to your first row and your record count. This isn't what I want to have on my dashboard, so I'm actually just going to highlight it and click delete. I want to be able to start from scratch. So the first thing I might want to do, so let's go back and look at the actual data. So let's take a look at what we have. We have student name, quarter one absences, quarter two absences, total absences overall, quarter one average, quarter two average, and semester one average. So this would allow us to do some really interesting analysis of comparing absences to class averages, looking at total absences over the course of the year to class averages. This is definitely something that will be useful to you as a teacher. Now, you can look at lots of different kinds of data using Data Studio, but this is our focus for today. So let's start by naming our report, and I am going to call this my period one data analysis. You want to name your report so when you go back to your Data Studio, you know what's there. And we're going to start by just adding some very basic charts to start. So let's start with a simple pie chart. So you click on Add Chart, and then you choose the chart you want, and you want to drag it and put it wherever you want to. I'm going to leave some space at the top because I'm probably going to add some text at the top once I'm finished putting my entire chart together. So it automatically picks a dimension for you. Let's talk about what that means first of all. So over here in your data page, you have your data source. So that's our spreadsheet that we pulled our data from. We have our dimension. You can look at different things, add multiples, but for this case, this is the basically the concept or the column that the data is being pulled from. So you can see here, it's the dimension is student name. The metric is how it's going to be measured, and then sort is if you want it sorted in ascending or descending order, and what you want to sort by. So for this chart, we're actually going to change our dimension, and we're going to change our dimension to, where is it? Semester one absences. Total absences. There we go. I'm sorry. So there's our total absences for semester one. And you'll see here that it's kind of all out of order, right? It's all out of order for us. So we're going to go over here and we are going to change our metric. So we want it in ascending order. And then we want to sort it by total absences. And so now you can actually see right now we have a record count. So it'll tell you this is the percentage of our students who have 0 absences. This is the percentage of our students who have 2, 4, 5, and so on. So this is basically what a chart like that would look like. But what's missing from this is a label. So we're going to go ahead and click up here where there's text, and we're going to add a label to our chart. What I love about Data Studio is that all these little lines pop up to make it really easy to have things line up for you. And this is the percent of student absences by number. And then I'm going to actually play around with this a little bit because I like to. So I'm coming over here to text properties. I am an Open Sans fan. I'm going to make it bold, make it a little bit bigger. And I'm actually going to shrink this down. Even though I know this box is this big, I just want to make sure it's just over here. Or we'll make it actually all the way. Okay. So now I have this right here. You can also modify the style of these a little bit. I often like to put boxes around them. So I look here, I've got my pie chart. I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to add a border. I'm going to just add a simple black border. So now you could see it better. And then I can come here and click on my title and I can move it up a little bit if I want to, move it down a little bit. Let's actually make it the whole thing again after all, and let's center the text. There we go. Okay, so we have our percent of student absences by number. Might be an interesting piece of data for you to look at. All right, now we're going to add a bar graph. So we're going to click on Add Chart. We're going to choose a bar graph here. We're going to go with this column chart. I'm going to put it over here on the other side. And again, it usually starts with whatever data you had left on your dimensions, but I'm actually going to change my dimension to semester one average. And so now I can see how many students have different averages across the board here, but I'm not a huge fan of it that way. I'm actually going to come in here to record count, and I'm going to change my chart fields to semester one average. So now you can actually see the different semester one averages across the board. Let's spread this out a little bit just to make it easier to look at. And then we're going to leave it sorted by this so you can actually see all of the data here. Now, I definitely see there's something wrong with our averages. I'm not sure why that is. I'm going to have to go back and look at the actual data. Let's go here. It doesn't look like it. So I think what it's doing is actually, oh, it's summing. See, look, perfect opportunity here. So this is providing a sum of semester one averages. So that's why here you see we have 293.5s, which makes 187. So what we're going to do is actually change this, and we're going to look for an average or a count. Let's go with count here. And so now you're actually going to see we have 2 students who have an 85 average, 2 with a 93.5 average. And we're going to change this to ascending. And let's change this here to semester one average. Okay. And we'll put it actually in descending order. So here we go. We have 99. Now, the other thing you're going to probably want to do here is click on your style. This only gives me 10 bars across, but I have 23 students, so I want to give myself at least 25 bars across so I can actually look at that data. Let's scroll down a little and stretch that out so we can see it better. And we're going to go back again and make sure we are sorting properly, and we are. So now you can see kind of there isn't really a bell curve in this class. It's an interesting piece of data to look at. Your highest grade is a 99.5. Your lowest grade is a 57.5. You have 2 students who have 85 averages and 2 students who have 93.5 averages. Otherwise, it looks like these averages are pretty much one, but you sort of do have a bit of a bell curve here when you look at it, because you can see you're really well broken down. We're going to, again, do some stylistic things here. We're going to go into style, and we are going to add a border down here, just a simple black border. And then I'm going to drop this down a little bit so I have room to put some text. I'm going to go in here. Going to add some text, and I'm going to call this semester 1 averages. Let's again, what size font did we use here? 14. So let's make this my Open Sans font that I like. You don't have to change the fonts if you don't want to, but I just like to make it look the way I like it to look. In a bold face, and there we go. So now we have our percentage of student absences by number, and we have our semester 1 averages. Now I'm going to go ahead and add another pie chart to this page of my dashboard here. I'm going to bring this over right here. There we go. And we're actually going to look at a different dimension. So we looked at percent of student absences by number. We're going to look at percent of student averages by number. So we're going to change our dimension to average. We're going to change our metric to average. And then we're going to go ahead and change our way that it's calculated once it finishes loading. Okay, there's our averages, and we're going to change this from a sum, and we're going to do this as a count. And then we're going to go ahead and sort our chart by average. So we're going to go with this green one here, and we're going to do this in ascending order. So you can see here that it's only allowing us 10 though, because here you have everyone else lumped in this others category. And I really want to see these averages all laid out in this pie chart. So I'm going to go to style. And again, I'm going to give myself more slices. So I believe in this, you can only go up to 20 slices, which is fine. 20 slices actually works because there were 23 students in the class and there were some that had double. So you can see here, you have this larger chunk here and you have this larger chunk here. Okay. And others does still include some others, but it's still a decent little chart to have. We're going to go ahead and add a title to it, just like we did with the others. So I'll do this. I love the little lines that pop up, and this is percent average by, or percent by average. We're going to highlight this, go change the fonts and style again, just so it's all uniform across my dashboard. Center it, and there we go. And I'm going to add a border to this box. Click on the box, come down here, give it a border, and there we go. So now I've got some interesting data that might be useful to me, but we're actually going to go ahead and add a page, and we're going to add even more data that's going to make this even more interesting for us. Now, one of the things that I like about Google Data Studio is that you can actually name your pages. So on page 1, I have my basic data, and on page 2, I have some data that I have not really touched yet. So I'm going to go ahead and add names to my pages. So I click on page here and I click manage pages, and that's going to bring up this report pages menu here. So I'm going to click on my 3 dots and I'm going to click rename. That will give me the opportunity to change this, and this will be called basic data. And then I'm going to do the same here, click on the dots, rename, and we're going to call this one comparison data. I'll show you why that's important once we have the rest of our data on this chart. All right, so we are going to go ahead and close out the report pages, and we're going to add some more data to this page that is going to allow us to compare absences to averages. So we're first going to start by adding a chart, and we're actually going to add a scatter chart. I'm going to pop that on this page here, leave some space for me to put in a title at the top. We don't need it to be quite that big, but we're going to go ahead and look at what is on this chart right now. The first thing is dimension. Dimension is student name. We want to keep the student name because once we start adding the data, that's going to help us to understand where our students are better. What we're going to be changing around here are metric X and metric Y, or your Y-axis and X-axis. Metric X for this one is record count. That's along the bottom here. And metric Y is quarter one absences over here. We're going to change those. So we're actually going to change metric X to be semester one average. So let's find that. There's our semester one average. And then we're going to change metric Y to be total absences. Let's get that here. And so now you can see these moved around. We can stretch it out a little bit so it's easier to access the little dots. But if you hover over the dots, you can start to see that according to this, if your semester one average is higher, further to the right along the chart, if your total absences are lower. So the lower your absences, the higher your average. And obviously there's going to be a few anomalies here and there with our students, but you can hover over and start to see kind of the trend as to where your students fall with this scatter chart. Let me go ahead and add myself a little title to this here. Again, change our fonts and color and sizes. And we're going to add our border around our table here. Okay. So there are your total absences versus semester averages. And you can, like I said, you can scroll over and start to see where your students are falling on this chart. Now we can definitely make this a little bit smaller. Let's go ahead and shrink it down a little and add another scatter plot next to it. And I'm just going to show you one. We're going to look at our quarter one absences versus our quarter one average. Let's go ahead and add a scatter chart again. We'll put it right next to this one. We'll stretch it out a teeny tiny bit like that. And again, sometimes it just pulls completely random data in here. So we're going to change that up. We want to change our dimension to be student name. That then attaches the names to these little dots here. So each dot is a student. We're going to make metric X quarter one average. And then we have quarter two absences actually was already what was pulled in. But if it was not, actually we need quarter one absences. I'm sorry. We're going to add in quarter one absences. And now you can start to look at just quarter one. I'm going to go ahead and actually make a copy. I'm going to Control C and Control V. That gives me this same header so I don't have to change all my fonts around again. I want to line it up. And then this is going to be quarter one absences versus quarter one average. There we go. We're going to kind of shrink this down a little bit to align, and just like before, add a border to our table. All right, there we go. So now you can see, that's going to bother me, so we're going to fix that as I talk. So now you can see that you have your total absences by semester and average, and then you have quarter one absences and quarter one average. So this is an interesting way to take a look at this data to start to see like where you might see trends and what your students are doing. We don't often have an opportunity to do this without having to really break things down. So this is one quick and easy way to get this same kind of information. So the last table I want to show you is a Google Data Studio pivot table. Many of you, if you're taking a course on data right now, or if you're just watching this video on YouTube because you wanted to learn more about Google Data Studio, you probably know about pivot tables. And pivot tables are wonderful, but they can be confusing and sometimes can get a little stressful to figure out how to make them look right or make them work. Google Data Studio's pivot tables are actually really easy to work with. So what we're going to do is go ahead and go to Add Chart, and we're going to scroll down and we're going to look for a pivot table. Now there's a couple of different types of pivot tables. There's a pivot table with heat map, a pivot table with bars, and just a pivot table. We are going to just do a basic pivot table right now so I can show you what information you can put in that. So let's go ahead and stretch it out a little bit so you can see more of the data. And right now what this is doing is comparing quarter 1 absences to quarter 1 absences to total absences. So you can see here that our students at the top here is the total, the quarter 1. These are up here. So that's how many absences a student had during quarter 1. And then underneath, you'll have all the names of your students, and it'll show you their number of absences they had during quarter 1. It's interesting this way, but it's probably not the best form of data to help you to really get a solid understanding of what this means. All right, so let's rearrange the data in this pivot table to give you a little bit better of a view of what we're looking at. So we're going to come down here and we're going to look at the two different pieces. We have our row dimension, which is student name. That's going to be the student names across here. We're going to leave that as is. And then our column dimension, and that's what is across here at the top. Our column dimension is actually going to change to total absences. So that's going to show you now total absences, and it is in descending order. So with your highest number of absences down to your lowest number of absences. And look, you can scroll on this data. I'm actually going to show you in a minute how to make this page longer so you can stretch this out fully if you wanted to. And you'll see here right now it just says total absences by total absences. That's because we didn't change our metric. Our metric is actually going to be changed to semester 1 average. Now that's going to change your data completely. So you're going to see that Holly Flex has now moved to the top because she has the highest average in the class and 0 absences. And if you scroll all the way down, Todd Packer, if you're an Office fan, no surprise, has the lowest average with 18 absences. Now I want to show you quickly how you can go ahead and make this page longer so that you can spread this out and actually see all your data in one shot. So we're going to actually go over here and we're going to go to, let's see, theme and layout. I'm sorry, I was in the wrong spot. Theme and layout. I'm going to click on layout. And down here under canvas size, we have this as US letter landscape, which is a pixel width of 1200 and height of 900. We're actually just going to randomly change this number. So we want it to go down, like, let's just say to 2000. And 2000 will give us a much longer document here. You can see how that got bigger. That'll give us more room to drag this. Unless you're planning on printing this, I like to make these as big as possible to help me figure out what I'm looking at. So I can drag this down, and now I can actually see all of my data on one page. And what I really like is that when you click on, when you kind of hover over a number, it will highlight the column and the row for you. So you can see here that, you know, Mr. Helper, our average student, has about 9 absences for the entire semester and an average of an 81. You can really kind of get a sense of where everything is. It's similar to a scatter plot, so it gives you the exact same data as you see up here, but it gives you that data in a different format. Now you can also go ahead and change the style on this. Some people like to do every other row odd colors. So I can go here under table colors. And so maybe we have our odd rows have a color. So let's just make it like this blue color. And there we go. Now you can see every other row has a color, so it's easier to see across. Now the last part of using this Google Data Studio is you want to change this into a viewing option. Because this is a little bit hard to run over, you risk messing up your data. But if you change right up here to view, this is now your viewable version of the data. You're not going to be able to mess with the data or mess it up if you're in the view situation. If you want to change your data up later on, you just obviously click edit. If you're going to share this with someone, let's say you're pulling in a bunch of data, you're a department chair and you're pulling in a bunch of data and you want to share it with your entire department, you can actually share it as a view only. So you would add people to it. I'm going to, I can add my tech supervisor account just so you can see that. It doesn't have email, so don't try emailing it. But I can actually view it and I can notify people if I want, or I can turn off that notify, which would then share it with that person. And I can click here, click manage access, and it'll actually give me a link that I can share that link with people. You can click here too. You can see we have our different tables. So we have our basic overall data and our comparison data. But you can create as many pages in here, as many different charts. There's a lot more opportunities with charts than what I even showed you in this video. But this is a basic overview, so I didn't want to overwhelm everyone with the different charts and graphs you can create. Eventually, you could also add filters, so you could actually have all of your data in here for all 5 periods that you teach. And if you had in your original Google Sheets a column that said class period, you can then set it up so that you could filter all this data by class period. So you could look at all 100-something students at once, but then filter down to just period 2. Or say you wanted to look at your honors students only. So you're going to filter by periods 3 and 4 because they're your honors classes. Those are things we can eventually look at explaining how to do. But right now, this is a very basic overview to give you some way to kind of manage your data to make it more easy to understand. If you have any questions at all, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. I am here to help, and have a wonderful day.